Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you handed them the keys to your entire life's work, only to watch them drive away with everything you built? I'm Margaret Chen, and I'm 54 years old. For the past 23 years, I poured every ounce of my energy, every dollar I saved, and every dream I had into building something meaningful, a small chain of artisan bakeries in Portland, Oregon. What started in my tiny kitchen in Northeast Portland became 3 thriving locations across the city, each one a testament to early mornings, burned hands, failed recipes, and the unwavering belief that hard work and honest business would build a legacy for my daughter, Emily. But there was one thing I didn't account for in all those years of mixing dough and balancing books. I didn't account for him, for Marcus Webb, the business partner I trusted with every financial decision, every bank password, every signed document, the man who promised to handle the complicated stuff while I focused on what I did best, the man who, one cold February morning, disappeared with every single rupee I had worked for. And if you're sitting there thinking, that could never happen to me, then please keep listening, because that's exactly what I thought too. And that ignorance cost me everything. Let me take you back to where it all began. Not to the betrayal. That comes later. And trust me, you'll feel every devastating moment of it, but to the beginning, to the hope, to the version of me who still believed that good intentions and hard work were enough protection against the world's harsh realities. It was 2001, and I was 31 years old, recently divorced, and living in a cramped studio apartment in Portland with my 7-year-old daughter. My ex-husband, David, had left us with exactly $1,047 in a joint checking account and a mountain of credit card debt I didn't even know existed. He had been managing our finances throughout our marriage, and I had been naive enough to trust him completely. Sound familiar? It should. Because that's where this story really starts. Not with Marcus, but with the lesson I should have learned from David but didn't. After the divorce, I worked 3 jobs just to keep Emily fed and in decent clothes. I waited for tables at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., cleaned offices from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and baked custom cakes from my apartment kitchen on weekends. I was exhausted, perpetually exhausted. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that made my hands shake when I tried to write checks for rent. But here's the thing. Those weekend cakes were my salvation, not financially, not at first, but emotionally. When I was mixing butter and sugar, when I was carefully piping roses onto a wedding cake, when I was watching someone's face light up at their custom birthday creation, I felt valuable. I felt like I was building something that mattered. My cakes started getting attention. Friends would order them, then friends of friends, then complete. Strangers who'd heard about the woman who makes those incredible red velvet cakes. By 2003, I had a waiting list for 3 months long. People would drive across Portland just to pick up one of my creations. That's when the idea hit me. Not gently, but like a lightning bolt that wouldn't let me sleep. What if I stopped working myself to death at 3 jobs and put everything into the one thing I actually loved? What if I opened a real bakery? I remember the exact moment the thought crystallized. It was 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and I was finishing a 3-tier wedding cake, my back aching, my eyes burning from exhaustion. Emily was asleep on the couch. She'd waited up to help me but had passed out around midnight. And I looked at this beautiful cake I'd created, looked at my sleeping daughter and thought, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I build a real life. The problem was obvious. I had no money. No savings, no assets, nothing but a 10-year-old sedan and a dream. Banks laughed at me. Literally laughed. I remember sitting across from a loan officer at First National Bank, watching him flip through my application with barely concealed amusement. "Mrs. Chen," he said, not even bothering to hide his condescension, "you have no collateral, no business experience, and frankly, no realistic plan. We can't just hand out loans to people who want to play baker." Play baker. as if the thousands of hours I'd spent perfecting my craft were just a hobby, as if the waiting list of customers wasn't really proof of demand. I left that bank with my head down and my dreams crumbling. But I didn't give up. I couldn't. Emily deserved better than watching her mother work herself to death in other people's kitchens. That's when I met Sandra Kim at the downtown farmers market where I was selling cupcakes on Saturdays. Sandra owned a small commercial kitchen space and had been watching me hustle for months. She was in her 60s, a Korean immigrant who'd built her own catering business from nothing back in the 70s. "You've got something, Margaret," she told me one Saturday morning, her weathered hands counting out my cash from cupcake sales. "I've been in this business for 30 years, and I can spot real talent, but talent isn't enough. You need capital, and you need knowledge." She offered me something better than money. She offered me time. She let me rent her commercial kitchen space at a steep discount in exchange for helping with her catering jobs. She taught me about food costs, about markup, about dealing with suppliers and health inspectors, and the 1,000 tiny details that separate hobbyists from real business owners. "Write everything down," she would say, tapping my notebook with a flour-dusted finger. "Every expense, every sale, every lesson learned. The moment you stop paying attention to the numbers is the moment someone else starts paying attention to them for you." I should have remembered that advice. God, I should have tattooed it on my forearm. For 3 years, I saved every dollar I could squeeze out. I cut my own hair, bought clothes from thrift stores, and Emily and I shared a bed in our tiny apartment because I'd converted her bedroom into a workspace for my growing custom cake business. We ate a lot of rice and beans. We skipped movies and restaurants and all the little luxuries most people take for granted. But Emily never complained. Not once. She'd sit at our cramped kitchen table doing homework while I worked, and sometimes she'd look up at me and say, "Mom, when you open the bakery, can I help?" And I'd ruffle her hair and say, "Baby, you're going to be my partner." By 2006, I had saved $23,000. It wasn't much, but combined with a small business loan I finally qualified for, $35,000 at a brutal interest rate, I had enough to lease a small storefront in Northeast Portland and open Margaret's Sweet Haven. The day we opened, I was terrified. What if nobody came? What if I'd spent everything and this beautiful dream fell apart in front of me? But they came. Oh, they came. From day one, there was a line outside. My reputation from the farmers' markets and custom cake business had built something real, a customer base that trusted my quality and craftsmanship. Within 6 months, I had hired 2 part-time employees. Within a year, I was profitable enough to start paying off that predatory business loan. Sandra would stop by sometimes, usually early in the morning before I opened, and she'd watch me work with this satisfied smile. "You did it," she'd say. "You actually did it." But she'd also add, always with that knowing look, "Now comes the hard part. Keeping it." That's where Marcus Webb enters the story. And if you're wondering when the betrayal happens, when everything falls apart, just hold on. Because the worst betrayals aren't the ones that happen overnight. They're the ones that creep in, slowly, politely, wrapped in friendly smiles and helpful advice, until you've handed over everything before you even realize you were being robbed. It was 2009, and Margaret's Sweet Haven was thriving. I'd been open for 3 years, and the recession that was crushing other businesses somehow worked in my favor. People couldn't afford expensive vacations or fancy restaurants, but they could afford a $4 cupcake that made them feel better about their struggles. Comfort food was my specialty, and Portland was hungry for comfort. But success brought new problems I wasn't equipped to handle. My tax situation had become complicated. I had employees now, which meant payroll taxes and workers' compensation insurance and a dozen other regulations I barely understood. I was spending more time on paperwork than I was on baking, and it was killing me. That's when Marcus walked into my bakery on a rainy October morning. He was professional. That's the word that comes to mind. Mid-40s, wearing a crisp navy suit despite the drizzle outside. carrying a leather briefcase that looked expensive, but not flashy. He had this calm, competent energy that made you immediately want to trust him. "Margaret Chen?" he asked, extending his hand with a warm smile. "I'm Marcus Webb, a business consultant specializing in small business operations. I've been watching your bakery from my office across the street, and I have to say, you're doing something special here." I was immediately on guard. I dealt with enough slick salespeople trying to sell me overpriced equipment or unnecessary services. But Marcus wasn't pushy. He wasn't trying to sell me anything at all. "I'm not here to pitch you anything," he said, as if reading my mind. "I just wanted to introduce myself. I work with several small businesses in this area, helping them navigate the financial and operational challenges that come with growth. If you ever need advice or assistance, here's my card. No charge for an initial consultation." He handed me a simple business card, Marcus Webb, CPA and business consultant, with a phone number and email. Then he bought coffee and a cinnamon roll, complimented my baking genuinely, and left. I didn't think much about it. I filed his card away and forgot about him. But 3 weeks later, I was drowning in quarterly tax paperwork, sitting at my tiny desk in the back office at midnight, trying to figure out depreciation schedules and deduction categories, and I was close to tears. Emily was now 15, and she was upstairs in our apartment above the bakery doing homework. I wanted to be up there helping her with algebra, not down here swimming in forms I didn't understand. I pulled out Marcus's card and stared at it for a long time. Finally, I called him. He answered on the second ring, even though it was nearly midnight. "Marcus Webb." "Hi, this is Margaret Chen from Sweet Haven Bakery. You gave me your card a few weeks ago. I'm really struggling with some tax stuff, and I don't know who else to call." There was no judgment in his voice, just calm professionalism. "Of course I remember you, Margaret. Are you at the bakery now?" "Yes, I'm trying to finish quarterly tax forms, and I'm completely lost. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he was. In the middle of the night, this professional consultant showed up at my bakery and spent 3 hours walking me through every form, every category, every question I had. He didn't rush me. He didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing things. He just helped. When we were done, I tried to pay him. He refused. "Consider it a welcome to the neighborhood gesture," he said with that calm smile. "Small business owners need to help each other. This city eats people alive if they try to do it all alone." "I can't just take your time for free," I protested. "You didn't. You gave me coffee and a cinnamon roll. Best cinnamon roll in Portland, by the way. We're even." Over the next few months, Marcus became something like a friend. He'd stop by the bakery once or twice a week, always buying something, always chatting for a few minutes. He'd offer small pieces of advice about supplier contracts, about insurance options, and about employee management. Every piece of advice was solid, practical, and genuinely helpful. He never pushed himself into my business. He never demanded anything. He was just there, like a helpful neighbor who actually knew what he was talking about. By early 2010, I was considering opening a second location. The first bakery was doing so well that I was turning away customers daily. There was a perfect storefront available in Southeast Portland, in a neighborhood that was gentrifying rapidly. If I moved fast, I could get in before rent exploded. But I was scared. Terrified, actually. Expanding meant taking on more debt, more responsibility, more risk. What if I failed? What if I overextended myself and lost everything? I talked to Sandra about it. She was cautious. "Growth is good, Margaret, but only if you can control it. Make sure you understand every financial obligation before you sign anything. Make sure you have someone you trust looking at the numbers." I thought about Marcus. He'd been so helpful over the past few months, and he'd never asked for anything in return. Maybe it was time to formalize the relationship, to actually hire him as my business consultant. When I approached him about it, he was almost reluctant. "Margaret, I appreciate the offer, but I want to make sure you understand what you'd be getting into. My standard consulting fee is $200 an hour, which might be more than a small bakery can afford. What if we worked out a different arrangement, I suggested. What if you became a part-time CFO of sorts, helped me with financial planning, tax strategy, expansion decisions, for a flat monthly fee? He thought about it. I could do $2,000 a month for comprehensive financial management, but here's what I'd suggest instead. What if I became a minority partner? I invest some capital into your expansion, and in exchange, I take a 25% ownership stake and handle all the financial operations. You'd still own and operate the bakery, but you wouldn't have to worry about the business side anymore. It sounded perfect. Almost too perfect. Why would you want to partner with me? I asked. You've got your own consulting business. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Honestly, because I believe in what you're building. I've worked with dozens of businesses, and most of them are just trying to make a quick buck. But you care about quality. You care about your customers. You care about your employees. That's rare, Margaret. And businesses like yours, businesses with actual soul, those are the ones that last. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. Sandra's warning echoed in my head. Make sure you have someone you trust looking at the numbers. And I trusted Marcus. He'd been nothing but helpful and honest for months. He'd never pushed, never pressured, never given me any reason to doubt him. So in April 2010, I signed a partnership agreement. Marcus invested $50,000 into the business, which allowed us to open the second location without taking on massive debt. And in exchange, he became a 25% partner and took over all financial operations. The partnership agreement was 47 pages long. I tried to read it, I really did, but the legal language was impenetrable. Marcus walked me through the highlights: profit sharing, decision-making authority, roles and responsibilities. It all seemed fair. Should I have a lawyer look at this? I asked hesitantly. Absolutely, Marcus said immediately. That's always smart, though I will say I had my attorney draft this, and it's pretty standard for this kind of arrangement. But yes, you should definitely have your own lawyer review it. The problem was that lawyers were expensive. The quote I got for a full contract review was $1,500, money I didn't really have to spare when I was about to open a second location. And the attorney I consulted briefly said the contract looked generally standard in the 15-minute free consultation. So I signed it. I signed away 25% of my business to a man I'd known for less than a year, based on trust and a brief legal review I couldn't afford to do properly. The second bakery opened in June 2010, and it was an instant success. Within 6 months, we were outperforming the original location. Marcus's financial management seemed impeccable. We always had enough cash flow, payroll was always on time, suppliers were always paid promptly. I was baking. I was managing employees. I was doing what I loved. And Marcus was handling the complicated stuff, just like he'd promised. In 2012, we opened a third location in Northwest Portland. By then, Sweet Haven Bakery was a legitimate Portland institution. Food critics loved us. We'd been featured in several local magazines. Tour guides were taking tourists to our locations. And Marcus continued to be the perfect partner. Professional, competent, always available when I needed him. He'd even started handling my personal taxes, saying it was easier to manage everything together since business and personal finances were so intertwined for small business owners. Just simplifies things, he said. One less thing for you to worry about. Emily was in college now, studying business at Portland State University, partly funded by the success of the bakeries. She'd come work shifts sometimes, and she was so proud of what we'd built. "Mom, you did this," she'd say, hugging me. "You built something real." I'd hug her back, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the sound of happy customers, and I'd think, yes, I did, but I didn't build it alone. Marcus was there too, always in the background, always making sure the numbers worked, always protecting our financial interests. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared in January 2015. I was at the original Northeast Portland location early one morning, 5 a.m. like always, prepping for the day. My assistant manager, Patricia, a woman who'd been with me since almost the beginning, came into the back looking worried. "Margaret, did you see this letter?" She handed me an envelope from the Oregon Department of Revenue. I opened it, expecting maybe a routine audit notice or some kind of form that needed filing. Instead, I found a demand letter for $47,000 in back payroll taxes. Apparently, we'd been underreporting for 3 quarters in 2014. My hands went cold. This has to be a mistake. Marcus handles all the payroll taxes. That's what I thought too, Patricia said quietly. But I've been noticing some other things lately. Little things. Like our producer mentioned last week that we were a month behind on payment, but I know we've been using those products. And remember how our equipment insurance was supposed to be renewed in November. I called to check on something and they said the policy had lapsed for non-payment. A sick feeling was growing in my stomach. Marcus handles all of that. I know, but maybe you should check in with him, just to make sure everything's okay. I called Marcus immediately. He answered on the second ring, sounding perfectly calm. "Margaret, good morning. What's going on?" I explained the tax letter and Patricia's concerns about suppliers and insurance. There was a slight pause, so slight I almost missed it, before Marcus's warm, reassuring voice filled the phone. "Ah, I know exactly what's happening here. There was a filing error with the Revenue Department. I actually already submitted a correction 2 weeks ago, but bureaucracy is moving slowly. As for the suppliers, we had a temporary cash flow issue due to the new oven installation at the Northwest location, but I restructured some payments and everything's current as of last Friday, and the insurance was just a renewal timing issue. The policy never actually lapsed. There was just confusion about the renewal date." He sounded so confident, so detailed, so believable, and he had an explanation for everything. "Are you sure everything's okay?" I asked. Patricia seemed really worried. "Patricia is wonderful, and I'm glad she's paying attention," Marcus said warmly. "That's exactly the kind of vigilance we need. But yes, everything is absolutely fine. I'll send you an email later today with documentation on all of this so you can see for yourself. And if you want, we can schedule a comprehensive financial review this week, go through everything together so you're completely comfortable." Relief flooded through me. "That would be great, thank you. Of course, that's what partners do." The email never came. And when I tried to schedule that comprehensive financial review, Marcus was suddenly very busy. "End of tax season crunch," he explained. "How about we do it in early March?" March came and went. Marcus always had a reason why we had to postpone, but the postponements were never dramatic or suspicious, just reasonable scheduling conflicts that made perfect sense in the moment. And here's the insidious thing about trust. Once you've given it, it's incredibly hard to take it back. Every time doubt crept in, I'd remember all the years Marcus had been reliable, all the times he'd helped me, all the way he'd been exactly the partner he'd promised to be. I'd think, he's busy. He manages 3 bakery locations and his own consulting clients. Of course he can't drop everything for a meeting. Stop being paranoid. But Patricia kept noticing things, small things. In March, 2 employees asked why their 401k contributions seemed lower than they should be. In April, our flour supplier called me directly, not Marcus, about a seriously overdue payment. In May, I randomly checked my business credit card statement and saw charges I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars at restaurants and stores that had nothing to do with bakery operations. Each time, I'd call Marcus. Each time, he had an explanation that sounded plausible. Accounting errors, system glitches, purchases for potential new suppliers he was evaluating. Everything always had a reasonable explanation, but the explanations never quite added up when I thought about them later. In June 2015, I did something I'd never done before. I went to the bank myself and asked to see our business account statements. Not because I suspected Marcus of anything terrible, but because I wanted to reassure myself that everything was fine so I could stop feeling this constant low-level anxiety. The banker pulled up our accounts, and I started looking through statements from the past 12 months, and that's when I saw it. Transfers. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Small amounts are mostly $500 here, $200 there, $800 somewhere else. Each one coded as consulting fees, or management fees, or operational expenses. But the frequency was alarming. Sometimes 3 or 4 transfers in a single week. "Excuse me," I said to the banker, pointing at the screen. "These transfers, where are they going?" The banker checked. "They're all going to an account under the name MW Consulting Services." M.W. Marcus Webb. My partner was paying himself, apparently thousands of dollars in additional fees beyond the profit share we'd agreed to. But maybe, I thought desperately, maybe this was legitimate. Maybe these were approved consulting fees I'd forgotten about. Maybe this was standard. "Can you print out a summary of all these transfers for the past year?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The banker did. When I saw the total, I felt physically sick. $143,000 in consulting and management fees paid to MW Consulting Services in the past 12 months alone. Our partnership agreement gave Marcus 25% of net profits, which had been averaging around $180,000 a year across all 3 locations. So his legitimate share would be $45,000 annually. He'd paid himself an additional $143,000 on top of that. And I'd never seen any of those payments because Marcus handled all the bookkeeping. I sat in that bank, holding those printed statements, and I felt the world tilting beneath me. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, he was stealing it, right in front of me, and he'd been doing it for years. I didn't confront Marcus immediately. I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. But Patricia convinced me to be strategic. "If you confront him now, he'll just have more explanations," she said. "And he'll know you're suspicious, which means he'll cover his tracks better. You need to document everything first. You need evidence." So I hired a forensic accountant. His name was David Rodriguez, and he'd been recommended by Sandra, who dealt with embezzlement in her own business years ago. "First thing," David said in our initial meeting, "don't let Marcus know you're investigating. Keep acting normally. Keep letting him handle the finances like always. The moment he knows you're on to him, that's when people like this disappear." Over the next 3 weeks, David dug through every financial record he could access: bank statements, credit card records, tax filings, supplier invoices, payroll records, everything. What he found was devastating. Marcus hadn't just been paying himself unauthorized consulting fees. He'd been systematically looting the business for nearly 4 years. He'd created fake vendor accounts and paid them for non-existent services, cleaning companies that never cleaned, equipment suppliers that never supplied anything, consultants who never consulted. All the money went to accounts Marcus controlled. He'd been underreporting our revenue to the IRS by around 15% annually, pocketing the difference, while making us liable for the unpaid taxes. He'd taken out a business line of credit in the company's name, forging my signature, and withdrawn $78,000 that he'd apparently used for personal expenses. He'd stopped paying our business insurance premiums months ago, meaning we were operating without coverage, while continuing to charge the company for insurance. He'd even been skimming from employee 401k contributions, which was a federal crime. In total, David estimated Marcus had stolen approximately $680,000 over 4 years. $680,000. I sat in David's office staring at the summary report, and I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and physically pulled out my heart. "Margaret," David said gently, "I know this is devastating, But you need to act now. File a police report, contact the FBI for the wire fraud and retirement fund theft, get a lawyer immediately, and freeze all business accounts that Marcus has access to." "But the partnership agreement," I said numbly. "He owns 25% of the business. He has legal access to the accounts." "Having legal access doesn't give him the right to steal. This isn't profit sharing. This is embezzlement, fraud, and theft. The partnership agreement doesn't protect him from criminal charges." "I am called Emily." She drove up from Eugene, where she was working after college, and she held me while I sobbed. "Mom, we'll figure this out," she kept saying. "We'll get through this." But I couldn't see how. Even if Marcus was arrested, even if he was convicted, even if we won a civil judgment against him, the money was gone. He'd spent it. And he probably didn't have assets worth $680,000 to recover. The business had been keeping its head above water because Marcus had been using lines of credit and delayed payments to cover the shortfalls he was creating. But now that I knew the truth, now that the accounting was being corrected, I could see the reality. Sweet Haven Bakery was nearly $400,000 in debt. We owed back taxes. We have suppliers. We owed on business loans I didn't even know existed. And we had exactly $12,000 in the primary business account, barely enough to make payroll for one more week. I filed a police report. I contacted the FBI. I hired a criminal lawyer and a civil attorney. I filed a lawsuit against Marcus for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, and embezzlement. And then I tried to find Marcus to serve him with the lawsuit papers. He was gone. His office was empty and cleared up overnight. His phone number went straight to a disconnected message. His email bounced back. His home address turned out to be a mail forwarding service. Marcus Webb had vanished like he'd never existed at all. The next 6 months were the worst of my life. Worse than divorce. Worse than the years of struggling to build the business. Worse than anything I'd ever experienced. The IRS put a lien on the business and my personal assets for the unpaid taxes. Suppliers, many of whom I'd worked with for years, demanded immediate payment or they'd stop deliveries. The landlord of our Northwest location threatened eviction for 3 months of back rent. I didn't know was unpaid. I had to lay off employees, good people, loyal people, who depend on me for their livelihoods. Patricia cried when I told her I couldn't afford to keep her on full time anymore. "Margaret, this isn't your fault," she said. But it felt like my fault. I'd trusted Marcus. I'd signed that partnership agreement without reading it carefully. I'd let him control the finances without proper oversight. I'd ignored the red flags for months because I wanted to believe in him. Emily moved back home to help. She graduated with a business degree and had been working at a marketing firm, but she quit her job to help save the bakeries. "Mom, we're going to fix this," she insisted. "We just need a plan." But what plan could possibly work? We were $400,000 in debt. We had no credit. We had no capital. We had no Marcus to manage the financial operations. And I was so traumatized by what he'd done that I was terrified to trust anyone else. Sandra came to visit one Saturday morning. She was in her 70s now, semi-retired, but she still had that sharp intelligence in her eyes. "Margaret, do you remember what I told you when you first started?" "Write everything down," I said tiredly. "Pay attention to the numbers." "Yes, but do you remember why I told you that?" I shook my head. "Because the moment you stop paying attention to the numbers is the moment someone else starts paying attention to them for you. And Margaret, you stopped paying attention." The words stung because they were true. "I trusted him," I said, my voice breaking. "I know, and trust is necessary in business. But trust without verification is just negligence disguised as faith." She pulled out a folder from her purse. "This is the name of a business recovery specialist. She works with companies that have been embezzled or defrauded. She can help you restructure, negotiate with creditors, and potentially save the business. But you need to call her today. Not next week. Today." The specialist's name was Jennifer Walsh. I called her that afternoon. Jennifer was in her 40s, sharply professional, and she had the kind of non-nonsense energy of someone who'd seen every financial disaster imaginable. "I'll be honest with you, Margaret," she said after reviewing my situation. "This is bad, really bad. But it's not impossible. I've seen businesses recover from worse. Worse than losing $680,000 and being $400,000 in debt? Worse than that," she said firmly. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to negotiate with every single creditor. Most suppliers would rather get paid something than nothing, so we'll work out payment plans. Second, we're going to file for an IRS installment agreement for the back taxes. Third, we're going to close the Northwest location. It's the least profitable and most expensive. Fourth, we're going to implement strict financial controls and transparency, so this never happens again. And fifth, you're going to learn every single aspect of financial management for this business, so you're never dependent on someone else again." "I don't know how to do financial management," I protested. "That's why I needed Marcus." "You didn't need Marcus. You needed education and systems, and I'm going to teach you both." For the next year, Jennifer essentially became my business partner, not on paper, but in practice. She taught me how to read financial statements, how to manage cash flow, how to negotiate with vendors, and how to identify red flags in bookkeeping. She was ruthless about cutting expenses. "This is a $400 monthly subscription for a service you never use. Gone. This is an equipment lease for a machine that's sitting unused in the back. Gone. This is a supplier who's charging you 30% more than the competitor down the street. Gone." We closed the Northwest location, which hurts. I'd been so proud of having 3 locations, but it immediately saved $6,000 a month in rent and operating costs. We renegotiated supplier contracts. Jennifer would call vendors and say, "Margaret's been a loyal customer for 8 years. She was defrauded by her business partner, and she's trying to keep the business alive. She can pay you 40% now and the rest over 6 months, or you can send this to collections and get nothing. Your choice." Most chose the payment plan. We set up an IRS installment agreement, $3,500 a month for 5 years, which was brutal but manageable. Emily took over all social media and marketing, building up our online presence and creating a loyal customer base who wanted to support a local business that had been victimized. And I baked. God, I baked like my life depended on it. Because it did. Slowly, it was almost imperceptible. Things started to stabilize. We weren't thriving, but we weren't drowning either. We were treading water, which felt like victory. But I was different. The woman who'd trusted Marcus Webb was gone. In her place, there was someone harder, more suspicious, more guarded. I have verified everything now. Every invoice, every payment, every account balance. I trusted no one. Emily worried about me. "Mom, you can't live like this. You can't suspect everyone of being a criminal." "Why not?" I snapped. "That's clearly what I should have done with Marcus." "No," she said firmly. "You should have had systems in place. You should have had proper oversight, but you shouldn't have to live in constant fear." But I was afraid, constantly. What if another supplier betrayed me? What if another employee was stealing? What if Jennifer, who I was now depending on, turned out to be another Marcus? The criminal case against Marcus went nowhere. The FBI couldn't find him. He'd apparently been planning his disappearance for months, maybe years, transferring money out gradually, establishing new identities, covering his tracks. He was a ghost, a very expensive ghost who'd stolen my life's work and vanished without consequences. That should be the end of the story. Small business owners get defrauded, struggle to recover, live with permanent financial and psychological scars. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of trust and the importance of financial oversight. But it's not the end, because the story doesn't end with victimhood. It ends with something I never expected: transformation. It was Emily who first suggested it. We were sitting in the original bakery after hours, both exhausted, reviewing financial reports for the 100th time. "Mom, what if we Told your story? What do you mean? What if we used what happened to you to help other people? What if we created workshops or resources for small business owners about financial management and fraud prevention? I stared at her. Who would want to hear from me? I'm the person who got completely scammed. Exactly. You're the person who learned the hard way. You can teach people what you wish you'd known. You can help them avoid making the same mistakes. The idea felt strange at first. My fraud wasn't something I wanted to advertise. It felt like a failure, a source of shame. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. How many other small business owners were out there right now, trusting the wrong person, ignoring red flags, setting themselves up for the same devastation I'd experienced? What if I could prevent even one person from going through what I'd gone through? Sandra loved the idea. Margaret, do you know how many people are in exactly your position right now and don't even know it? Teach them, warn them, give them the knowledge you didn't have. So, Emily and I created a workshop series called Protect Your Dream, Financial Management for Small Business Owners. We offered it for free at first, just testing it out, advertising in local business groups and on social media. 30 people showed up to the first workshop. By the third one, we had over 100. I taught them everything I'd learned. How to read financial statements so you actually understand what's happening in your business. Red flags that indicate potential fraud or embezzlement. The importance of separation of duties. Never let one person control everything. How to set up proper financial controls and checks and balances. Why you should always review your own bank statements, no matter how much you trust your accountant or partner. The crucial difference between trusting someone and verifying their work. Insurance products that can protect your business. Business interruption, insurance, liability insurance, key person insurance. How to protect yourself with proper contracts, including clauses about financial reporting requirements, audit rights, and termination conditions. People would come up after the workshops with tears in their eyes. My bookkeeper has been asking me to sign blank checks, one woman said. I thought I was just being paranoid about questioning it. Now I know I need to fire her immediately. My business partner handles all the finances and won't let me see the bank statements, a man said. I've been too afraid to push back. You just gave me the courage to demand transparency. One woman told me, you probably just saved my business. I've been noticing discrepancies for months and telling myself I'm imagining things. I'm hiring a forensic accountant tomorrow. The workshops evolved into a consulting business. Emily and I partnered with Jennifer to create a full service helping small business owners set up proper financial controls, audit existing systems, and recover from fraud. We call it Guardian Business Solutions. And here's the amazing thing. Helping other people heal from financial trauma started healing my own trauma. Every business owner I prevented from being defrauded felt like a small victory against Marcus. Every proper financial system we set up felt like I was fighting back against the chaos he'd created. Every workshop where I shared my story felt like I was transforming my victimhood into purpose. The bakeries started thriving again, not because we were growing rapidly, but because we were growing sustainably with proper control and transparency. Emily took over as CFO, and yes, I verified every single thing she did, and she understood why. We hired a part-time accountant, but I never stopped reviewing books myself. Trust but verify became my mantra. And slowly, over the course of 3 years, we paid off every debt Marcus had created, every supplier, every tax bill, every fraudulent loan. It took selling my car and buying a used one. It took living frugally and skipping vacations. It took 70-hour weeks to work and never, ever relaxing. But we did it. In 2019, 4 years after discovering Marcus's fraud, Sweet Haven Bakery was debt-free. I stood in the original location on the morning we made the final payment, and I cried. Not sad tears, relieved tears, triumphant tears. Tears of a survivor who'd been knocked down but refused to stay down. Sandra came by that morning, as she often did. She was 78 now, moving slower but still sharp as ever. "You did it, Margaret. You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have done this without help." "But you did do it," she insisted. "You could have declared bankruptcy. You could have walked away. You could have given up. Instead, you fought. And not just for yourself, everyone who comes after you." That's when it hit me. The real lesson of this entire nightmare wasn't about avoiding fraud or implementing controls or learning financial management. The real lesson was about resilience, about refusing to let betrayal define you, about transforming pain into purpose, about recognizing that being victimized doesn't make you a victim. It makes you a survivor with wisdom to share. Marcus was eventually caught in 2020. The FBI found him living in Costa Rica under an assumed name, running the same scam on business owners there. He'd defrauded at least 7 other people over the years, stealing an estimated $3.2 million in total. He was extradited, tried, and convicted. He got 12 years in federal prison. I went to hear his sentencing. I wanted to see his face when justice was served. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The confident professional consultant who'd walked into my bakery 10 years ago was gone, replaced by a sad middle-aged man in an orange jumpsuit. The judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I'd prepared a long speech about the devastation he'd caused, about the sleepless nights and the panic attacks and the fear and the rage. But when I stood up to speak, different words came out. "Your Honor, what Marcus Webb did to me and my business was terrible. He stole nearly $700,000, which represented years of work and sacrifice. He destroyed my trust in people and forced me to rebuild everything from scratch. But here's what he couldn't steal. He couldn't steal my determination. He couldn't steal my skills. He couldn't steal my relationship with my daughter, with my employees, with my customers. He couldn't steal my ability to learn and grow and transform pain into purpose. Because of what Marcus did, I learned financial management. I learned to implement proper controls. I learned to help other business owners avoid the same fate. I learned resilience. I'm not grateful for what he did. I'm not one of those people who say everything happens for a reason. What he did was evil and selfish, and he should be punished for it. But I am proud of who I became because of how I responded to what he did. And that's something he can never take away." Marcus didn't look at me during the statement. He stared at the floor, and I didn't know if my words meant anything to him. But they meant something to me. They meant I'd survived. Truly survived. Not just financially, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. Today, Sweet Haven Bakery is still operating. Just the 2 original locations now, which is perfect. We're profitable, debt-free, and we have the best financial controls of any small business I know. Emily is now the CEO. I'm still the head baker and the face of the business, but she runs the operations. And yes, I check her work constantly, and she never complains because she understands why. Guardian Business Solutions has helped over 400 small businesses set up proper financial controls and audit existing systems. We've helped at least a dozen business owners discover fraud before it became catastrophic. I'm 59 now. I've got gray hair and creaky knees and an instinctive distrust of people who want to handle the finances for me. But I've also got wisdom. Hard-won, expensive wisdom. And I want to share it with you. So, here's what I need you to hear. If you're a small business owner, you must understand your own finances. Not surface-level understanding, deep understanding. You need to know how to read a balance sheet, an income statement, a cash flow statement. You need to know where every dollar comes from and where every dollar goes. But I'm not good with numbers, you might be thinking. Neither was I. You know what I am good at? Learning. And so are you. But I don't have time to learn financial management, you might be thinking. You know what takes more time? Rebuilding your business after it's been destroyed by fraud. Here are the non-negotiable rules. 1. Never ever give one person complete control of your finances. Never. even if they're family, even if they're your best friend, even if they're a licensed CPA with perfect references. Separation of duties is essential. 2. Review your own bank statements every single month. Not just glancing at them, actually reviewing every transaction. If something doesn't make sense, question it immediately. 3. Require dual signatures for any payment over a certain amount. We set ours at $1,000. No exceptions. 4. Have an outside accountant or bookkeeper review your books quarterly. Not the same person who's doing the day-to-day bookkeeping, a separate independent reviewer. 5. Never signs blank checks or documents you haven't read completely. I don't care how much you trust the person asking. Read everything. 6. Insurance is not optional. Business interruption. Insurance, liability insurance, key person insurance. These aren't luxuries for big corporations. These are essentials for small businesses. One disaster can destroy everything you've built if you're not protected. 7. Know the warning signs of embezzlement. Oh, unusual reluctance to take vacation. Embezzlers often won't take time off because someone might discover their fraud. Oh, living beyond apparent means. Fancy cars, expensive vacations on a modest salary. Oh, excessive control over financial processes with no transparency or resistance to proper financial controls or audits. Oh, missing documentation or lost records. Oh, suppliers or creditors calling about overdue payments you didn't know about. 8. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't talk to yourself out of your instincts because you don't want to seem paranoid or because you're afraid of offending someone. Your instincts are trying to protect you. 9. Have written agreements for everything and have a lawyer review them before you sign. Yes, it costs money. You know what costs more? Litigation after fraud. 10. Learn from my mistake. Don't let anyone convince you that understanding your finances is optional. It's not. It's fundamental. The hardest lesson I learned is this. Good people do terrible things when given the opportunity and the rationalization. Marcus wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a professional, intelligent, personable man who helped me genuinely at first. I don't know when he decided to start stealing. Maybe it was planned from the beginning. Maybe it evolved over time. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that I created the opportunity by abdicating financial responsibility. And then I ignored the red flags because I didn't want to believe someone I trusted was betraying me. Don't make mistakes. Don't trust blindly. Don't ignore warning signs. Don't assume that good people would never steal from you. Verify. Always verify. So here's my question for you. Are you Margaret in 2010, unknowingly setting yourself up for financial devastation? Are you trusting someone with your business finances without proper oversight? Are you ignoring red flags because you don't want to seem paranoid? Or have you been through something similar? Have you been betrayed by someone you trusted? Have you had to rebuild from financial ruins? I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you wish you'd known. Tell me how you survived. Because we need to talk about this. Small business owners need to stop being ashamed of being defrauded and start sharing knowledge so others don't fall into the same traps. Your story might save someone's business. Your warning might prevent the next embezzlement. Your wisdom might give another broken business owner the courage to keep fighting. And if you found value in this story, if it taught you something, or inspired you, or made you want to check your own finances right now, please subscribe to this channel. Because I'm going to keep sharing these stories of courage, of resilience, of business owners who faced terrible challenges and found the strength to overcome them. Stories that might just save your business, your savings, your dream. Subscribe, share this with other business owners, and let's build a community of informed, protected, empowered entrepreneurs who refuse to be victims. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Now go verify your bank statements. Margaret Chen, Portland, Oregon survivor, Baker, Guardian.